Applicants or recipients must report to SWD as soon as possible any changes in information previously provided which may affect their eligibility or cause a reduction in the amount of CSSA payable. Applicants or recipients who do not report such changes on purpose may be liable to prosecution for breaching the theft ordinance. With respect to all suspected fraud cases substantiated upon the Department's in-depth investigation, SWD will recover overpayment from the relevant applicants or recipients. Generally speaking, the SWD will issue written warnings to those concerned or refer serious fraud cases to the police for investigation. Persons convicted of fraud by the court may be imprisoned, bound over, sentenced to community service order, and fined. CSSA fraud is not common as a matter of fact. In 2021-22, the number of suspected CSSA fraud cases reported by members of the public and detected through investigations initiated by the department was 1,143 and 550 respectively. Only 323 suspected fraud cases were substantiated upon the in-depth investigation, which accounts for less than 0.2% of the total number of cases of about 220,000. The number of suspected fraud cases reported by members of the public and detected through investigations by SWD, suspected fraud cases substantiated upon investigation and follow-up actions in the past 5 years are set out in the annex. At present, there are 6 special investigation teams within Social Welfare Department for investigating suspected fraud cases reported by members of the public or referred by hotline SWD staff and for recovering overpayment. These teams mainly comprise 120 Social Security grade officers and currently employ 6 retired discipline services officers as investigation advisors to assist in handling more complex cases so as to enhance the effectiveness of counteracting CSSA fraud. In addition to remind the recipients to report their circumstances honestly and drawing attention to the serious consequences of defrauding payments through its departmental website, SWD publicizes the same message by publicity materials placed suspected fraud cases in person at the Social Security field units or may do so through SWD's report fraud hotline, online form, email, fax, or by post. SWD will continue to adopt a stringent approach in handling each application, implement initiatives in different areas, and endeavor to prevent and counteract CSSA fraud with a view to ensuring proper use of public monies. Dr. Junius Ho. Mr. President, now I raise a question. I ask whether the SWD's law enforcement action has been perfunctory, but it seems that the Secretary is only playing with the numbers. According to his reply, the fraud cases account for only 0.2% of the 220,000 CSSA cases, be it the 1,143 or 550 as a denominator. That should be a case detection rate of 28 or 58%. You should not use 220,000 as your denominator, Secretary. Isn't it perfunctory? Indeed, we have 220,000 CSSA cases and some 290,000 applicants are involved. 80% of these recipients are the old and frail and chronically ill. And we have a stringent mechanism of approving applications, and only a small number of cases involved fraud of CSSA payments. And when we consider the small number of fraud cases, we also need to have regard to the total number of cases to determine the proportion of fraud in the mechanism. And over the years, the number has proven to be small. Mr. Dominic Lee, according to our service and the district for many years and our observation, there are indeed many suspected cases of CSSA fraud. Like Dr. Junius Ho said, it could be as high as 30% of all cases. My question is, if you do not have report received from members of the public, do you have a mechanism to initiate investigations yourself? And how long does it take for the investigation process to complete? There are a number of hurdles to go through in applying for a CSSA. The first hurdle is the application stage. That means the applicant would need to attend interviews in person to submit documents and information, and only when the officer is satisfied will the CSSA be granted. And the second hurdle is a review. Last year, the SWD reviewed 150,000 cases out of the 210,000 cases in total. We take a risk-based approach. In other words, for some cases, you may have a review once every 3 years. And for able-bodied adults, however, the frequency is higher. We conduct mostly annual reviews. So we have the vetting procedure, we have the review procedure to stem out fraud. We also have spot checks, and we also rely on reports made by members of the public to ensure proper use of public money. Mr. Stephen Ho. As mentioned by Dr. Ho and Mr. Lee, as we have observed, well, have you put the mic on your lapel? Right, thank you, Mr. President. As mentioned by the two members, as far as our work in the community is concerned, we could feel that there are many suspected CSSA fraud cases. We have a definition of fraud. We believe these are not genuinely needy persons. They do have assets. But then, according to the government's definition of fraud, they need to comply with the government's eligibility criteria. That means they need to fill in forms for checking. My question is, has the department reviewed the mechanism to see whether the criteria could stem out fraud, such as bogus marriages in the past, and also those having assets in the mainland and haven't made a declaration to the department? Have you initiated cooperation with other government departments in your investigation process? And are these government departments willing to provide information? Because if they are not cooperative, these fraudsters would continue to practice fraud. That is at least fraud in our definition. To answer Mr. Ho's question, we have a very clear means test mechanism. Let me give you this example. Say if we have received a report from a member of the public, or in the review process, suspicion is raised on possible CSSA fraud. Apart from having an interview with the applicant, we also pay a home visit. Say for a single parent CSSA recipient, during the home visit, well, if we find items used mostly by men, and we would be suspicious, and we would take the initiative to conduct investigation. And say for assets in the mainland, if we have this suspicion, we would write to the relevant authorities in the mainland for information to be provided, and we do receive replies from them. We do not keep statistics, but last year we issued 300 such letters to the mainland authorities to check if the recipient owns any real property on the mainland. So we do have a mechanism to prevent CSSA fraud. You talked about, well, I'm talking about other governments, not just the authorities in the mainland. We work with any government. Let's say if somebody owns property overseas, we also write to the overseas counterpart to seek verification from the authorities concerned. Mr. Peter Shou. Mr. President, the CSSA is a safety net to help those genuinely in need. We are deeply dissatisfied with the CSSA fraud. Now, Secretary, in recent years, we have encountered a prevailing difficulty in the recruitment, especially in our sector. Now, if we pay wages by cash, many applicants would come forward. They would prefer cash payments because they could circumvent the investigation relating to the CSSA payment. They do not have additional income because of the CSSA payment or because of their status as PRH tenants. Now, are there ways to stop them? Secretary. Mr. President, as I said, during the application stage, the applicant is required to declare all incomes and earnings. They are required even to declare sums of cash by transfer into their account. And under the new arrangement, the disregarded earnings would be $4,000 for 1 month. So the most important point is for applicants to declare their income and assets to us. Mr. Peter Show, your question hasn't been answered. Mr. President, my question is actually whether the government has ways to stop those receiving wages by cash and hence circumventing the CSSA investigation. I have nothing to add. Mr. Yao Wing-kit. Mr. President, I've received inquiries and calls for assistance from elderly CSSA recipients. Their family members have actually taken out insurance policies with emphasis on savings without the knowledge of the elderly recipients, and the insurance policies are above the permitted income asset limit. And these elderly people are really in great fear of being sent to prison. I've received many calls for assistance in this regard. Are there ways to help them? If the CSSA recipient is also an insurance policy holder, he is required to make a declaration. In our publicity efforts and also in our interviews with the applicants, we ask with great clarity whether they hold any insurance policies, and elderly recipients are required to do the same. Elderly applicants may not be as articulate, but we will try different ways to make sure they do the declaration if necessary. Mr. Lai Tongkua. About the 6 special investigation teams of the Social Welfare Department, I'd like to ask whether they're efficient. According to a reply, they investigated 1,600 cases as of last year. So you have 6 teams comprising 120 grade officers. That means per year they investigate 1 case only. That's 13.3 cases per year per team, and then only some 300 cases were substantiated. Following that, the cases will be referred to the police for follow-up investigation. You don't provide the prosecution figures. You have 120 officers to conduct investigation. Why can't you initiate prosecution afterwards straight away? Why must you refer these cases to the police for follow-up investigation? Isn't it a duplication? Yes, there are 120 Social Security grade officers in our 6 special investigation teams. Apart from cases reported by members of the public or those referred by the frontline staff, there is still a lot the teams are required to do, because overall speaking, we have over 120,000 beneficiaries under the CSSA system. So that's the first point. Second, if we're satisfied that there is basis to initiate prosecution as our next step, it is appropriate to approach the police, because police has ample experience in this regard. Mr. Stanley Lee, according to the government, there are different ways to ensure proper use of public monies. Now let us consider from another perspective the penalties for such offences. My question is whether the penalties are deterrent enough for those substantiated cases. Once the court decides on the CSSA fraud cases, the penalties are meted out by courts. There are serious cases involving imprisonment as well as community service orders.
Second question, Mr. Holden Chow. President, the government's current dental care policy aims to raise through publicity and education public awareness of oral hygiene and health, and to encourage the public to develop good oral hygiene habits. Under the current policy, the government mainly undertakes publicity and so on. So can the administration tell us over the past 5 years how many people have received treatment or consultation at those government clinics? And also, secondly, are there any medium to long-term policies to come up with a policy for dental care? If yes, please give us the details. And also, are there any plans to train up more dentists? And if none, why? And thirdly, through the number of clinics or DHCs, will there be any plans? And also, through the primary healthcare steering committees, will there be further plans? And also, if there are any details, please tell us. And if none, why not? Secretary for Health and Hygiene. At present, the government's policy is to enhance public awareness on oral health by way of education and publicity, and the public would also have to have a good policy. Under the current policy, the government mainly undertakes publicity, education, and promotion of oral health, particularly with emphasis on nurturing good oral hygiene habits from an early age, including providing the school dental care service to children. Generally speaking, the need for dental treatment or surgery due to tooth decay and gum diseases can be greatly reduced if good oral hygiene habits are maintained. The government currently provides or subsidizes limited dental services, which mainly include providing treatment for the public or for emergency cases and implementing measures for persons with special dental care needs, especially the elderly and families with financial difficulties or persons who have difficulty in accessing general dental services. These services include special oral care services and healthy teeth collaboration for persons with intellectual disabilities, as well as dental care support for the elderly under the Outreach Dental Care Program for the elderly and the Community Care Fund Elderly Dental Assistance Program. Elderly persons may also use healthcare vouchers to receive dental services in the private sector, while persons with financial difficulties may also receive subsidy to cover dental treatment expenses under the Comprehensive Social Security Assistance Scheme. My reply to the various parts of the question raised by Mr. Holden Chow is as follows. First, at present, general dental care services in Hong Kong are mainly provided by the private sector and non-government organizations. The limited dental services provided by the government are confined to emergency treatment. The Department of Health, or DH, allocates certain sessions each week in its 11 dental clinics to provide free emergency dental treatment, commonly known as general public sessions, for the public. Such services cover treatment of acute dental diseases, prescription for pain relief, treatment of oral abscess, and teeth extraction. The dentist will also provide professional advice with regard to the individual needs of patients. The number of attendees at the 11 DH clinics or dental clinics with GP sessions over the past 5 years and the relevant establishment of dental offices are set out in the annex. Second, to cope with the rising demand for dental services in Hong Kong, the government has further increased the number of University Grants Committee or UGC-funded first-year, first-degree training places in dentistry in the 2022-23 to 2024-25 triennium from 80 to 90. It is expected that there will be around 400 dental graduates becoming registered dentists in the coming 5 years. The government will also provide 10 UGC-funded taught postgraduate places in dentistry per year in the 2022-23 to 2024-25 triennium to ensure a stable supply of dental specialists. On the admission of non-locally trained dentists, the Dental Council of Hong Kong has increased since 2015 the frequency of the licensing examination for non-locally trained dentists from 1 sitting to 2 sittings per year, and has improved the arrangement of certain parts of the licensing examination and updated its result retention policy so as to attract more qualified non-locally trained dentists to practice in Hong Kong and contribute to the diversity of the local dentistry workforce. Separately, as set out in the 2022 policy address, we will explore creating new pathways for the admission of qualified non-locally trained dentists. We will press ahead with the formulation of specific details of the proposal and consult relevant stakeholders afterwards. Subject to the progress of discussion, we will strive to introduce the legislative proposal into the Legislative Council within 2023. Third, District Health Centers, or DHCs, serve as the hub for coordinating the provision of primary healthcare services for the public and collaborating with various healthcare professions. Services of DHCs focus on primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, which include health promotion, health risk factors assessment, disease screening, chronic disease management, and community rehabilitation, etc. Under the steer of the Steering Committee on Primary Healthcare Development, DHCs are currently directing resources to tackle the most prevalent health risk factors and chronic diseases that consume the most substantial medical resources, including hypertension, diabetes mellitus, and musculoskeletal disorder. DHCs also organize health promotion activities such as health education on dental and oral care, and play the role of a primary health care resource hub in the district, connecting different healthcare professions in a community, including dentists, coordinating and making referrals for persons in need. The government is well aware of the public's keen demand for dental services, and the 2022 policy address has therefore put forward the setting up of a working group on the development of dental care services to review the existing dental care services and advise the government on matters including enhancement of the scope and mode of these services. The government will continue to maintain communication with various stakeholders, including the Legislative Council, and listen to their views with a view to formulating measures to promote the oral health of the public. Thank you, President. Mr. Holden Chow. Well, Secretary, in the main reply, you said that you'd be relaxing the rules for non-locally trained dentists to practice in Hong Kong. Of course, I did see that, but then there's still room for improvement. And I understand that, I would often go to Tuen Mun in the small hours of the morning in order to visit those who are waiting for the dental clinic to open in the morning. Well, that's good. But then for the Tuen Mun general services, it would only be available one day a week. And then I think the maximum would be 3 places, and then the minimum would be just 1. So can you just increase the number of places so as to help those who have been waiting earnestly for the services? So can that be done at least? Yes, we do understand the need of the public, and if you look at the establishment of the government, we have 371, and we have up to 50 vacancies, and therefore there are many vacancies, and therefore in retention of talents, we have been adopting a multi-pronged approach in doing that. For the existing dental clinics, for the main functions supposedly are to serve the civil servants. That's because that's one of the terms under the employment policy for civil servants, because we do have the duty to provide dental services to serving civil servants and their families, and therefore these dental clinics have been set up for the purposes of undertaking those obligations under the employment contract. And then in terms of the sessions that have been set aside for the public, the utilization rate is already up to 100%, and therefore there is no possibility that we can set aside further sessions to increase the free emergency dental treatment services or general public sessions for the public. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. I think the shortage of manpower is already affecting many sectors, including dental services, including both services in the public and private sectors. And well, for the licensing examination that has been halted, and also we are also narrowing the scope of services, and you're actually only increasing the number of places by 10, and there will be even more fierce competition between the public and private sectors for dentists. And you said that there is a large number of vacancies in the dentist establishment in the government. So how come there is such a severe shortage? That's because there is a lack of promotion pathways, because you've already scrapped the system under which there will be consultant dentists. So will you consider increasing the promotion pathways in the government establishment in order to attract more talents to join the government as government dentists. Thank you. Secretary, well, as far as the government is concerned, in terms of the dentist establishment, there is indeed a promotion ladder. As to the detailed establishment, I think the Civil Service Bureau has already got a very clear guideline, and there are a set of rules to go by. And also on the ratio of individual grades and so on. Well, I understand that government's pay is rather attractive, but then the government has also put in place a private-public partnership in terms of dental services so that for elders in need, they can make use of health vouchers and so on. And there are also alternative ways for them to go to the private market in order to get the services. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, President. We understand that healthcare professionals are in great shortage. As the Secretary said, one in 7 is now not filled in terms of the vacancies, and obviously there is a shortage of services. And if that is the bottleneck, then can you implement this proposal? That is from the Greater Bay Area. You can also introduce this health voucher or dental services voucher, because many elders are reluctant to go to a private dentist in Hong Kong because the cost would be at least $700, but then they would be more than willing to go to Shenzhen for such services because it's a lot cheaper. So can you allow them to receive private dental services in the Greater Bay Area by using the health care voucher? That would help them. So can you consider that? Secretary. Well, for the healthcare vouchers can be used at the Shenzhen Hospital of the Hong Kong U, and the Shenzhen Hospital run by Hong Kong U does provide dental services. But then because of the pandemic, it would be quite difficult for members of the public to travel to Shenzhen to get those services, including whether or not they're going to use the healthcare vouchers. So we will have to first deal with the pandemic situation before we can allow people to travel across the boundary to get the services. But then indeed, for Hong Kong people living in Guangdong province, they can still receive dental services from the Hong Kong U Shenzhen Hospital. Mr. Ngan Men Yu. Thank you, President. Many elders lack the awareness of oral hygiene, and as a result, their teeth are in ill condition, and therefore they will have to go to see the dentist, and very often they would have to undergo surgery. And yes, the community care fund has already enhanced its subsidy for these elders. But then for elders with acute dental problems, can you subsidize them when they get dental services? I suggest that there can be a progressive system whereby those who are older can get more subsidies. So can you consider that? Secretary. Well, in order to assist those in financial difficulties to get dental services, in fact, the CCS system would actually provide subsidies for people to get dental services. For those eligible CSSA recipients, they can apply and go to the 73 subsidized dental clinics to receive the consultation and also get the services. And registered dentists in Hong Kong can also provide the treatment that is needed. And the level of subsidy would depend on the actual charge of the clinic and also recognized charge of clinics, and also the maximum level set by the SWD. So the higher would prevail. And we will also set up a working group on dental services to look into that, and that will be further discussed by the working group. Next, Ms. Chen Hoyan. Well, in the main reply, the Secretary said that there would be limited dental services in emergency situations. But then if you look at the 11 dental clinics, there are only 2, Kowloon City and also Kwun Tong Dental Clinic. So the Kowloon City clinic is open on Wednesday, and then Kwun Tong is open on another weekday. So that would be available for the entire for all the residents in Kowloon So that is far from adequate because you can't provide emergency services. So if they have two teeth or three teeth that are in pain, then they will have to wait for at least 2 or 3 times before they can get the treatment. So given the fact that there is such an acute shortage of this for the general public, so can you do a bit more to help those in need? Secretary, we have to emphasize that for dental health policy, we have to do it by way of publicity education in order to enhance public awareness so that we can encourage the public to have good oral hygiene habits. So that's a preventive approach. With regard to the limited dental services that we are providing, they are only confined to emergency situations. As I said, the original purpose of setting up these dental clinics was to provide services for the civil servants, and therefore it's very limited. And also, given the manpower of dentists, we have a vacancy rate of over 12%, and therefore, for the time being, there is simply no possibility that we can increase the number of sessions. And indeed, for dental services, they are mainly run by the private sector, as well as the NGOs. They are non-government agencies or organizations. With regard to the detailed plan for further development of dental services run by the government, as I said, there's a working group on the development of dental care services in Hong Kong. It'll be reviewing the situation and it'll be making recommendations for the long term. Yes, Elizabeth Court. Very often in the district, we can see that elders couldn't sleep, couldn't eat because of tooth pain, and this is really very heartbreaking. That's why we have been telling the government you will have to enhance training so that more dentists can be trained up to provide the services. And you said that you'd be introducing more non-locally trained dentists. That would be welcome. I hope that can be done by way of legislative amendments, and I hope that the working group on the development of dental care services would not take 5-7 years to complete this work, because there is this urgent need for more services. And you are not able to provide the services right now because of the limitation. Then can it be done by way of public-private partnership so the services can be provided to those in great need, for example, grassroots elders? And just now we also said that for such a PPP, can that also cover dental services available in the Greater Bay Area, other than the Hong Kong Yu Shenzhen Hospital, so that for those in genuine need, they can improve their oral health, because we don't have any policy on that yet. So you will have to consider that, Secretary. Secretary? Well, for the existing mechanisms, including healthcare vouchers and also subsidy plans and so on, they are already able to allow the elders to go to a private dentist to get the services. As to further PPPs, as proposed by the Honourable Member, for example, to procure private dentist services and so on, we will have to wait until after the working group on the development of dental care services has come to a conclusion after consulting the stakeholders. With regard to healthcare vouchers, indeed, because of the pandemic, not all the elders would be able to go to the Hong Kong Yu Shenzhen Hospital to use the healthcare vouchers there for dental services. We do have plans so that healthcare vouchers scope of use can be extended. In particular, healthcare vouchers can be used to take out mainland's healthcare policy, and we would also be looking into the possibility of healthcare agencies meeting the requirements so that they can also be allowed to accept healthcare vouchers. But then that would be somewhat more complicated because we will have to consider their quality of services, etc. But then that would also be subject to the limitation of the pandemic. Next, Michael Tian. Well, on the 13th of May, at the Health Services Panel meeting, I pointed out that, well, in this day and age, eyes, ears, and also mouth, if we have problems, we can always go to a government clinic for consultation. But then for dental services, they are not available. And therefore, I propose that we should introduce non-locally dentists to provide the services and so on. You promised that you would be looking into that. And a few months later, the policy address said that you would be exploring the possibility of introducing non-locally trained dentists into Hong Kong. And does that mean that in the long run, you're going to give the green light so that for government healthcare services, that would also cover dental services. I'd like to know the details, and if there is a sufficient supply of dentists, well, will you be covering everything, including mouth, ear, and eyes, and also teeth, or would it be that you would only be covering some of the services but not all? Secretary, well, you're talking about having public hospitals providing comprehensive healthcare services for the public. Well, in the working group on the development of dental care services, we will be looking into that. But then indeed, right now, public healthcare services can only provide emergency services, and that might not be able to cover all these services.
Question number 3, the Honourable Yong Hai Yan. On the 31st of August this year, the Vice Premier of the State Council clearly expressed the hope that Hong Kong strengthens its professional services, provides professional services such as legal, maritime, financial, and consultancy services for the Belt and Road Initiative, and builds in BRI and our comprehensive services platform. Regarding the professional financial services to be provided by the platform, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it has drawn up plans on the professional services to be provided by the platform, if so, of the details, including the implementation timetable, the anticipated outcome, for example, the number of investors to be attracted to invest in BR and our projects, and how Hong Kong can consolidate its status as an international financial center through provision of such services. 2, how the Infrastructure Financing Facilitation Office under the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and its partners, including the Silk Road Fund, will dovetail with the building of the comprehensive platform so that the platform can provide distinguished professional financial services for the BNR initiative. And 3, whether the government has put in place other complementary policies and measures to attract and facilitate overseas financial institution investors through the professional financial services to be provided by the platform, participate in the financing of BRN infrastructure projects, and if so, of the details, if not, the results for that. The Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, I would like to thank Ms. Yong for her question. My consolidated reply to the 3 parts of the question is as follows. President Xi stated in its important speech delivered on the 1st of July this year that the central government fully supports Hong Kong in its effort to seize the historic opportunities offered by national development and actively dovetail with the 14th Five-Year Plan and other national strategies such as the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area and the high-quality development of the Belt and Road. Indeed, as our government attaches great importance to the opportunities brought by the BNIR and will continue to make a good use of Hong Kong's mature and efficient financial market and professional strengths to contribute to the Belt and Road development in the following financial service aspects. First, in infrastructure financing facilitation, the HKMA set up the Infrastructure Financing Facilitation Office, IFFO, in 2016 to connect key stakeholders for promoting infrastructure investment and financing. IFFO now has nearly 100 partner institutions from the mainland, Hong Kong, and the overseas. Since its launch, the IFFO has organized more than 30 large-scale conferences, seminars, and workshops on infrastructure investment and financing to share relevant information, experiences, and best practices. Since the establishment of the Infrastructure Financing and Securitization Department in 2019, the Hong Kong Mortgage Corporation, HKMA's MCS, invested in infrastructure loan assets of over $800 million as the end of last year, covering projects in the BNR countries. HKMC is taking forward a pilot infrastructure loan-backed securitization scheme expected to issue up to $450 million of PILBS products in the institutional market within this financial year. And the objective is to channel market capital into high-quality infrastructure projects for promoting regional economic development and consolidating Hong Kong's position as the regional infrastructure financing center. 2. Offshore renminbi business. The mainland's economic and trade connectivity with the Belt and Road countries keeps strengthening and is increasing the use of renminbi in bilateral trade and investment. As of August this year, renminbi deposits, including outstanding certificates of deposit, in Hong Kong was about 990 billion renminbi, providing liquidity support to offshore renminbi transactions and financial services in the BNR countries and regions and globally. Statistics of the worldwide interbank financial telecommunications, SWIFT, also indicate that about 75% of global offshore renminbi payments are processed in Hong Kong. We will continue to take forward the relevant work and enhance market infrastructure to enhance our strengths as the largest offshore renminbi business center. 3. Asset Management and Corporate Treasury Center. We are endeavoring to attract corporations in the Belt and Road countries and regions to set up corporate treasury centers in Hong Kong. In this regard, we have launched a series of measures, including the limited partnership fund regime and the fund redomiciliation mechanism and tax concessions for carried interest issued by eligible private equity funds. We will also offer tax concessions for family-owned investment holding vehicles managed by single-family offices in Hong Kong. HKMA will also continue to actively promote the strengths of Hong Kong as a CTC hub to corporations. 4. Green and sustainable finance. To encourage more entities to make use of Hong Kong's capital markets and our financial and professional services for green and sustainable investment, financing and certification, we launched in May last year the Green and Sustainable Finance Grant Scheme to provide grants for eligible bond issuers and loan borrowers to cover their expenses on bond issuance and external review services, encouraging more green financing activities in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited launched a voluntary carbon trading platform last week on which eligible participants can trade voluntary carbon credits to neutralize or compensate for the buyer's carbon emissions. Corporations in the Belt and Road countries and regions can make use of this platform to trade high-quality voluntary carbon credits and facilitate capital flow to green projects. 5. Risk management. There are many multinational insurers and reinsurers with rich experience and knowledge in Hong Kong, which can provide diversified professional services for enterprises participating in the Belt and Road related infrastructure investment projects. We encourage mainland entities interested in making foray into the international market to establish captive interest in Hong Kong to elevate their consolidated corporate risk management capabilities. Through setting up the Belt and Road Insurance Exchange Facilitation Platform and the Hong Kong Special Risk Consortium, the Insurance Authority has pulled together stakeholders, including enterprises, insurance companies, insurance intermediaries, industry associations, experts, to promote information exchange and facilitate matching of special risk owners with service provider, promoting the sustainable development of the Hong Kong insurance industry. 4. 6. Hong Kong accounting services. Hong Kong's accounting sector is renowned for its high professional level with good professional standards and regulatory regime at international levels. The new regulatory regime of the accounting profession in Hong Kong has been in operation since 1st of October this year, which has vested the regulatory powers of Hong Kong's accounting sector with the Accounting and Financing Reporting Council, regulated and independent from the profession, bringing the regime in line with international developments. The accounting profession can provide high-quality accounting, auditing, and assurance services for enterprises and projects in the Belt and Road countries and regions, helping these enterprises and projects align with international financial standards. We will continue to make good use of Hong Kong's strengths in financial and professional services and further Hong Kong's participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you, President. The Hong Kong Observatory has announced that the number 8 typhoon signal will be hoisted before 1:45 p.m. I will adjourn the meeting after I have dealt with the two government's motions. Well, Ms. Eunice Yeo, the government has done a lot in relation to the BNRI. I think the measures are quite fermented now. And the IFFO under the HKMA, the secretary says that it has 100 partner institutions. But we don't know the effectiveness of this IFFO's work, and we expect the government to do more. Especially the central authorities have ordered that we should build a comprehensive platform. What is our roadmap here, Secretary? Thank you, President. For this comprehensive services platform in relation to BNR, this is a very broad subject. We are working on many fronts, including risk management, accounting, sustainable finance, and also infrastructure financing. So we are doing work on all these fronts. Ms. Eunice Young is very clear about this. The IFFO under the HKMA specializes in this kind of work. A lot of the projects are long-term, and the risk and the returns involved may not be within the capability scope of the financial institutions. So many countries, including Hong Kong and other parts of the world, are doing more in infrastructure financing. Because the projects are long-term and the risks are involved are high, these may be challenging. So there are specialized institutions working on these fronts. Even though this is the case, that doesn't mean that we are working on a fragmented approach. When we look at the Belt and Road Initiative, there are demands on all sides. There are demands on infrastructure financing, demands on professional services like accounting. Outside of my main reply, say if there are conflicts between Party A and Party B, mediation services are also required. So when we talk about the comprehensive services platform, it should cover a wide scope. And Hong Kong is an international financial sector, and we provide a wide range of professional services. So we are presented with tremendous opportunities. Different institutions are working on different fronts, but it's not the case that we are working on our own silos. Our CEDB colleagues are also here, so he can also talk about the BNR summits and seminars that he has hosted and the work that the CEDB has done. So can I defer to Mr. Chan, please? Thank you. First of all, we will continue to work with the relevant ministries of the mainland, and through various exchange platforms, we will closely liaise with them, like what the Secretary said. And we have hosted a number of matching sessions. For example, we have hosted a number of exchange sessions and also sessions in relation to economic trade and overseas cooperation zones overseas. Over the years, we have seen the participation of over 4,000 representatives from different organizations. The annual BNR Summit is also very popular, and there is one-on-one matching session. And the one this year was held in August, and we have hosted over 800 such matching sessions. So through these matching sessions and our routine work, we would identify opportunities in the BNR regions for Hong Kong enterprises. Mr. Champion Lang. The Secretary said the IFFO has hosted a number of seminars. They look forward to the government to more actively identify opportunities in investment and help them resolve their problems. Does the government have any plans to step up the functions of this platform? Thank you, President. Secretary. Thank you, President. Well, we've been heading towards the direction of promoting coordination among the different government departments. The IFFO will identify opportunities for financing. But then on a more macro level, we would aim to identify more opportunities for Hong Kong companies, and we aim to provide Hong Kong's financial and professional services to BNR countries. Our effort has been ongoing. I visited the Philippines and Bangkok and international occasions like APEC and ADB meetings. I have met with different representatives from international community, and Indonesia has a plan to relocate their capital, and huge capital is involved in this exercise. I have recommended to them our financial services. So if we receive any information on specific projects, we'll definitely talk and liaise with our colleagues in the HKMA, and they will follow up on seeking the relevant opportunities. Members can rest assured that different government departments and organizations are communicating with each other so that we can, as a whole, serve the Belt and Road countries. Mr. Tempo Lang. The Insurance Authority has established the Belt and Road Insurance Exchange Facilitation Platform and the Hong Kong Specialty Risks Consortium. It has put together different stakeholders, but then it doesn't have the capability to take on certain risk, and their effectiveness is yet to be improved. Does the government have any measure to make sure that these platforms can really help and bring insurance business from the Belt and Road countries to Hong Kong and promote the sustainable development of Hong Kong's insurance industry? Mr. Chan has pointed out that under the Insurance Authority, we have set up these platforms. We would like to meet the industry's demand. Say in Belt and Road countries, if there are insurance opportunities, we'll try to provide the relevant services. In my main reply, we said that at these platforms, there are different parties' participation, including enterprises, insurance companies, insurance intermediaries, and industry associations. The risks are on all sides, so we need experts to help us, specialists help us, so that we know exactly how we can provide solutions to problems in the insurance sector. If Mr. Chen has any specific suggestions on how we can improve the platforms, we are all ears to members' views. We will follow up after the meeting. All along, we've been liaising with the mainland institutions. Like in our visits, I have communicated with ministry leaders in various Belt and Road countries. We have tried to talk to the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission of the State Council on this. We would like to highlight our strengths in our professional services and financial services. We would like to help state-owned enterprises to go out and invest in projects in Belt and Road countries. We have been liaising with the Insurance Authority all along. We would definitely follow up on any opportunities identified. Mr. Kenneth Falk. Well, Hong Kong should give full place to its own advantages in one country, under one country and two systems principle. In the Nansha plan, it is said that support will be given to Hong Kong and Macau to assist mainland enterprises to invest in the Belt and Road regions. Does the government have any plans to cooperate with the Guangdong provincial government to do more work in Belt and Road countries? Let me declare an interest. I have projects. My company has projects in Nansha. Well, we have talked to Mr. Fock earlier. This is a state policy, and we've been following closely on state policy's latest developments. We will try to leverage on Hong Kong's strengths to serve the country's needs. In Nansha, well, in terms of green finance, we can do some work. They hope that they can cooperate with us in promoting green finance to foster the development of Nansha. We've been following up on that front. We have introduced Hong Kong companies to Nansha. We will try to leverage on Nanshan's strengths and enhance the overall competitiveness in the region. Now, apart from green finance, I also said that we should help state-owned enterprises to go out. For Belt and Road regions, some state-owned enterprises and also private enterprises are also trying to invest there. Some of them have been there for quite a while, so they do have some understanding. So we are a professional. We provide professional services. So we can provide, say, mediation services, legal services, financial services. So we can provide one-stop services to them. We hosted many seminars and forums. Well, these are just beginnings. There is still some way to go. So given the opportunities, we will do our very best to give full play to the strengths of our professional and financial services to help these enterprises to establish a presence in the Belt and Road regions. Let me say this to members. If in your dialogue with different people, if you identify any opportunities that we can follow up on, we will be more than happy to listen to you. Thank you, President. For the comprehensive services platform, does the government have planned to establish a BNRI board on the Hong Kong Exchange? Now, the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock markets are not fully open, so the European and the US companies cannot actually establish or access the market. So I think the responsibility lies on the Hong Kong stock market. If there is a dedicated BNRI board on the Hong Kong Exchange, then Hong Kong will play a bigger part in the BNRI. Mr. Tang's question relates to a bigger subject. How can we help our listed enterprises to go to the BNR regions? I have been doing work on that front. I have paid visits to overseas countries. We hope that more overseas companies can be listed in Hong Kong. And in the Hong Kong Exchange, there is new initiative to allow more companies to be listed in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Well, to a certain extent, we have an arrangement in which BNR companies can be listed in Hong Kong. We are fully open. If investors are more interested in the BNR projects, we do have indexes to provide reference for the investors. So we would like to do more to attract international enterprises to get listed in Hong Kong.
Question 4, Ms. Judy Chen. Thank you, President. Information of the Environmental Protection Department shows that although commercial vehicles, including trucks, buses, light buses, and taxis account for only about 20% of the total number of vehicles in Hong Kong. The nitrogen oxide emissions account for more than 90% of the total NOx emissions of all vehicles here. There are views that the use of new energy commercial vehicles can improve roadside air quality. In this connection, will the government inform this council, one, of the respective numbers and percentage of new energy vehicles in the various types of registered commercial vehicles at present? 2, whether it has assessed the effectiveness of the various incentive measures and trial schemes relating to the promotion of the use of new energy commercial vehicles, CVs, launched in the past 3 years, and whether it will introduce new measures and ancillary facilities to promote the popularization of new energy CVs. If it will, of the details; if not, reasons for that. And 3, whether the government has studied the establishment of a legal framework for the use of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. If so, of the details; if not, reasons for that. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, the government announced last year the Hong Kong Roadmap on Popularization of Electric Vehicles, the Clean Air Plan for Hong Kong 2035, and Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2050, setting out the long-term policy objectives and plans to promote green transport. Among them, the transition of commercial vehicles, CVs, to new energy vehicles with zero emissions is vitally important to reduce roadside air pollutant emissions and attain the target of carbon neutrality in transport sector before 2050. In terms of new energy and electric CVs technologies, the adoption of single-decker buses in overseas and the mainland is gradually increasing, while the technologies for goods vehicles are still under development. Hong Kong is a relatively small market with right-hand drive vehicles and has a unique and demanding operating environment, including majority of buses being double-deckers, air conditioning required all through the year, hilly terrains, high daily mileage, and high passenger loading. Therefore, it takes time to identify models that are suitable for our use. With a view to accelerating the adoption of electric and new energy CVs in Hong Kong, the government has been proactively communicating and collaborating with the trade and vehicle manufacturers. In this regard, the government has set a target specifically for the transition of CVs to zero-carbon vehicles, which is to announce a roadmap for the promotion of electric public transport and ECVs by 2025. My reply to the question raised by Ms. Judy Chan is as follows. 1. At present, new energy CVs are not common in Hong Kong. According to the Transport Department, as at the end of September 2022, there were a total of 3,848 registered new energy CVs, including hybrid vehicles, which include 358 goods vehicles, 68 buses, 33 light buses, and 3,385 taxis, accounting for 0.3%, 0.5%, 0.4%, and 18% of the total number of vehicles in their respective classes. 2. As regards the promotion of trials of electric public transport and ECVs, the government has injected $180 billion to subsidize franchise bus companies to purchase 36 single-decker for trial on a number of routes, with a view to assessing their operational performance and helping these companies to build confidence and gain experience in using e-buses. Most of these single-deckers continue to operate after trial. They have helped these companies to understand the operation of e-buses and necessary support required when a large fleet is to be adopted in the future. With the experience gained, some bus companies have placed orders with manufacturers for single and double-decker. They have announced their plans to use more single and double-deck e-buses for their service. As for public light buses, the government is also making preparations to launch a $80 million pilot scheme on electric public light buses, which is planned to commence in 2023. Besides, the government is providing subsidies to the transport trade via the $1.1 billion New Energy Transport Fund, the fund for short, for trials and applications of green transport technologies, including various new energy CVs and vessels. Over the past 3 years, the fund has approved 120 applications on ECVs and electric vessels, putting a total of 163 electric, light, medium, and heavy good vehicles, e-buses, e-taxis, e-coaches, and e-motorcycles, as well as 3 e-vessels on trial. To further promote green transport, the Chief Executive's 2022 policy address announced a wide range of measures. These include trials of at least 180 ECVs in the coming few years and a roadmap for the promotion of public transport and ECVs by 2025. Generally speaking, most of these ECVs under trial were found to be smooth, quiet, and environmentally friendly, and in general pose no problems for drivers. They also help to save fuel costs. In view of this, government targets to introduce about 700 e-buses and 3,000 e-taxis by end of 2027. We provide assistance to bus companies to replace the old diesel buses with new e-buses, as well as to set up charging facilities in new and existing bus depots. For taxis, the government will continue to encourage more suppliers to introduce e-taxi models suitable for use in Hong Kong. There is also the promotion of trials of new generation e-taxis and replacement of old LPG taxis with electric ones. In parallel, we have stepped up efforts to set up an e-taxi charging network, including the installation of dedicated quick chargers for taxis on Lantau Island and in Sai Kung by phases. They are expected to commence service from mid-2023 onwards. 3. There is a global drive to identify and develop zero-carbon technologies in order to achieve carbon neutrality. The consensual view is that hydrogen fuel will be increasingly used in the future. It has the potential to become one of the key zero-carbon energy sources. Our country is also exploring hydrogen fuel technology, including the use of hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. To keep abreast with the developments in order to allow more choices of Hong Kong in the future. Our Bureau is leading an interdepartmental working group to progressively commence the trials of hydrogen fuel cell electric double-decker buses and heavy vehicles in 2023 with a view to assess their performance in a local setting. The government will also conduct risk assessment on hydrogen refilling stations, arrangements of hydrogen supply, hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles on road, etc., and to review relevant regulations and standards as well as guidelines in order for the establishment of a legal framework for the local use of hydrogen fuel. President, I agree with the Secretary that we have a very challenging operating environment. As far as I know, for those double-decker on trial, they are used on flat terrain. And I have learned that they have put electric public light buses on trial, but the performance was not ideal. Our country has put in place a prime example. In the Winter Olympics this year, they have used hydrogen fuel buses. About 70% of the terrain's hilly, and for such buses, at under 20 degrees Celsius, they can provide heating, and the charging only took a very short time. So I wonder whether this new energy will be used and what percentage it will be, because we would like to see an early introduction of hydrogen fuel buses in Hong Kong. Secretary, of course, we will explore the use of hydrogen buses and how to expedite its introduction. We have with franchise buses as well as heavy vehicle suppliers as well as suppliers of hydrogen fuel. We are having a discussion. We hope that the trial could be put in place early next year. As I've said, that hydrogen fuel plays a very important role to achieve zero carbon emission. But we do need to find out what technical support we need, what standards there are in place, and if there is popular use in Hong Kong, what the cost is compared to e-vehicles and other forms of energy. So it's not just close to the heart of the company. It's also a concern for bus companies and other transport operators. So we do need to put these vehicles on trial to see how we can further promote it. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, I'm glad to hear that the EEB has put in place a working group to put in place a trial by 2023, the use of hydrogen fuel cell electric buses and vehicles. The use of this energy is maturing. There are practices that we can draw reference from other parts of the world. So apart from setting standards, revising regulations and setting guidelines, well, how can they promote the cooperation of the academic government as well as the trade to promote the use of hydrogen fuel? I mentioned about a trial in my reply. It's not just the work of the government. I've also mentioned that we will make use of our discussion with different parties and organizations, say, for example, potential hydrogen fuel suppliers and users, mainly the 2 franchise buses operators as well as operators of heavy-duty vehicles. We'll talk about supply and use. Different departments will participate. That includes the EMSD, which will support we will give technical support. The Fire Services Department which will provide advice on safety, as well as the Transport Department. So From upstream supply to downstream use, we will participate. We will set up an expert panel inviting academics and experts to participate, because I'm sure that with their experience and their knowledge, we will all benefit from it. So as I said, for upstream supply and downstream use, together with the academic, we will start this trial. We will in detail study technology involved as well as the feasibility of its use in Hong Kong in the future. Mr. Kenneth Lau, I declare that I am a user of an electric vehicle. Last year, the government announced a popularization roadmap of electric vehicles. By 2050, all diesel and fuel-propelled vehicles will be phased out. Currently, when we see for electric vehicles, they use lithium batteries, which is very costly and difficult to be recycled. Local universities have recently made a breakthrough, a go-kart using a new energy, which is much cheaper than lithium battery. So that we are in the position to widely promote the use of this energy in order to popularize the use of ammonia as a fuel. Well, in the promotion of hydrogen fuel, there are many different ways. Ammonia is actually a spin-off of hydrogen. We can directly heat up ammonia. But there are also saying that, well, hydrogen fuel should be turned into a battery, a cell, which will propel vehicles. So there are many different ways to make use of hydrogen fuel. But why is there an emergence of ammonia fuel? Because hydrogen has a very low density. It is very difficult to transport and handle this fuel, which in turn pushes up price. If we turn hydrogen fuel into ammonia, which has a higher density, then transportation will be easier. So there are views saying that if we use ammonia fuel, it will be better. There are research and development of directly heating ammonia or using ammonia directly as a battery fuel. But it depends on its cost, because if you turn hydrogen into ammonia, then we need to consider many different factors. We will monitor the trial to see how it develops. In exploring the use of hydrogen fuel vehicles, we can put in place small trials the use of ammonia fuel. We keep an open mind. In the end, we will see what the cost is as well as the maturity of the technology before we make a decision. Mr. Gary Chan, I do agree that the use of new energy is the future trend. Well, the government said that they would put in place a lot of e-buses. But for e-buses, there are problems with charging as well as the distance they can travel. For the cost of one e-bus is twice of that of a diesel bus, but the lifespan is half of a diesel bus. So why would anyone purchase such a costly bus? You said that franchise bus operators will receive subsidy under the New Energy Transport Fund to replace their diesel buses. But what about at the time of the renewal of their franchise, you put in place a requirement that bus operators will have to use new energy vehicles? Secretary, Mr. Chen talked about a crucial point, that is in relation of cost. Under the New Energy Transport Fund, trial of different technologies will be subsidized. However, in terms of long-term use, we will have to look at different factors. Bus operators will receive support, and however, bus fares will have to be affordable. Our economy is suffering from a downturn. We need to consider financial soundness in any operation. We'll talk to bus operators to see if there are ways for the government to spend wisely whilst helping bus operators to develop the use of new energy vehicles. We don't rule any possibilities. We work with the Transport and Logistics Bureau to explore this issue. At the moment, we don't have the best solution, but we will consider all different options. Mr. Frankie Yik. President. Well, Secretary, I personally think that the development direction of heavy-duty vehicles will be on hydrogen fuel cells. It's a technology that is in existence, but it will take time for it to be popularized. The challenge Hong Kong faces is the provision of hydrogen fuel and whether these vehicles are allowed to use cross-harbor tunnels or other tunnels. If it still takes time to adopt this technology, at the beginning of 2024, there is the supply of liquefied LPG. This technology is commonly used on the mainland, and the prices are rather affordable. Why don't you consider using this as a transitional arrangement before the introduction of other technologies? That is to allow heavy-duty vehicles to make use of liquefied petroleum gas, liquefied natural gas. What we consider mostly is that it will not put a heavy burden on the trade. Heavy-duty vehicles are expected to have a long lifespan, and if we consider the use of liquefied natural gas as a fuel for heavy-duty vehicles, then we need to first consider infrastructure and assistance offered to help them replace these vehicles. But liquefied natural gas is not zero emission, so before 2050, these vehicles will have to be replaced by zero carbon emission vehicles. And that would put an extra cost on the trade. It is not cost effective for us to divert our direction. When we plan for zero carbon emission, we need to consider the total operating cost of the trade and the problems of replacement of the fleet. So our current proposal is the best direction. Mr. Kennedy Wong, in the third paragraph of the Secretary's reply, he said that in order to achieve carbon neutrality, there are many different ways. I am aware that on the mainland, they make use of green methane, to replace fossil fuel. And I hear from the government that there is an interdepartmental working group. But we're talking about expertise that are beyond the knowledge of departments. Wouldn't you approach other experts, including mainland experts, to help you? We have regular exchanges with experts of different fields, including mainland ones, so we are alive to the development of different areas. Locally, we work with universities and companies that provide the technology as well. You talk about green methanol. Well, this is not a new technology. The use of methanol in propelling vehicles is a technology used many years in other places, in other countries. But this is still an interim technology to be used. We're talking about carbon neutrality. So we want to achieve zero carbon emission. Green methanol, you may say that it is environmental friendly. It is a carbon neutral fuel, but large-scale use may create other problems. So we are exploring other zero carbon emission technologies. Well, we may use this form of fuel if there are outstanding problems unresolved.
Question 5, the Honourable Yim Kong. Thank you, President. The 2022 policy address has put forward a number of measures to draw for talents, including attracting leading innovation and technology talents around the globe. There are views pointing out that apart from I&T, sectors such as finance, maritime, education, healthcare, and arts and culture also need to attract leading talents in order to foster Hong Kong's diversified development. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it will extend the concept of leading talents to include fields such as I&T and lay down a clear definition or guidelines for this concept, so as to facilitate leading talents in other fields to have a clear understanding of the government's preferences in terms of talent demand. 2, as the aforesaid policy address has pointed out that the government will provide special facilitation measures in a targeted manner to attract top-notch I&T talents to bring with them their business or research and development outcomes to Hong Kong, of the specific proposals for such measures and whether they are sufficiently competitive internationally. And 3, whether it will consider formulating key performance indicators for its work in attracting leading talents. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, in consultation with the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau, ITIB, my consolidated reply to a question raised by the Honourable Yim Kong is as follows. 1, the concept of leading talents is closely linked to the development of relevant industries with varying specific criteria and requirements for leading figures under various industries. The existing talent admission schemes for Hong Kong allow talents of different backgrounds and professions to seek development in Hong Kong, with a view to meeting the shortfall in local talent supply and enriching our own talent pool. While most of the admission schemes do not set restrictions on industries, different schemes provide professional in shortage locally with facilitation in different forms and to different degrees. For instance, the Quality Migrant Admission Scheme, or QMAS, aims to attract highly skilled or talented persons around the world with no restriction on their industries. There are 2 streams under the QMAS, namely the Achievement-Based Points Test, APT, and General Points Test, GPT. APT caters for top-notch talents who have received an award of exceptional achievement such as Nobel Prize, national and international awards, or Olympic medals, whose work has been acknowledged by their peers and have contributed significantly to the development of the field. Separately, applicants assessed under GPT are awarded points based on their background, including academic or professional qualifications, work experience, international vision, language proficiency, and future plan in Hong Kong. Additional points will be given to relevant talents who meet the specifications of respective professions under the talent list, facilitating them to settle in Hong Kong. The Advisory Committee on Admission of Quality Migrants and Professionals will recommend to the Director of Immigration how best to allocate quota after considering all relevant factors. As announced by the Chief Executive in the policy address, the annual quota of QMAS will be suspended for a period of 2 years, and the approval process will be improved in order to attract more world-class talents to relocate to Hong Kong. Moreover, a new top talent pass scheme targeting at high-income talents or graduates from the world's top 100 universities will be launched, covering top-notch talents in various industries. Any individual meeting the requirement of annual salary reaching 2.5 million Hong Kong dollars a past year of graduation from the world's top 100 universities on 4 designated world university ranking lists can apply for a 2-year visa to explore opportunities in Hong Kong. As the INT industry is crucial to the development of Hong Kong, the government has been formulating special measures to attract leading talents in basic scientific research to Hong Kong. Launched in June 2021, the Global STEM Professorship Scheme stepped up efforts to support universities in recruiting international renowned INT scholars and their teams to conduct research and teaching activities in Hong Kong. The scheme has so far supported over 60 outstanding scholars. Moreover, the policy address announced the intention to attract leading INT talents around the globe. The ITIB will collaborate with the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, OASIS, under the Financial Secretary to provide special facilitation measures in a targeted manner to attract top-notch INT talents to bring with them their business or R&D outcomes to Hong Kong. Respective policy bureaus will continue to review the developments of various pillar and major industries, including the manpower needs of these industries, in order to formulate appropriate industry-based measures to recruit leading talents after thorough consultation with relevant stakeholders. 2. OASIS will formulate attractive special facilitation measures covering aspects such as land, tax, and financing that are applicable exclusively to target enterprises and provide one-stop facilitation services in areas such as visa application and education arrangement for their children, etc. With regard to the INT industry, leading talents who play an influential or leading role in a certain technology area internationally are able to drive development of the relevant industries in that area. For instance, talents who hold patents of core technologies or authority figures who have been involved in developing international standards or has extensive experience in transforming R&D results. ITIB will collaborate with OASIS to negotiate with the enterprises for businesses to be brought in by leading INT talents and assess the potential contribution to Hong Kong's INT development and economy in order to provide them with tailor-made plans to facilitate the setting up of their operations in Hong Kong. The government will set up the Advisory Committee on Attracting Strategic Enterprises, comprising representatives from relevant business sectors and social leaders to advise the FS on the overall strategy. 3. The government has set key performance indicators for measures to draw for talents, targeting to admit at least 35,000 talents annually with an intended duration of stay of at least 12 months through the talent admission schemes from 2023 to 2025. That is an increase of 40% over the annual average number in 2020 and 2021. Leading talents of different industries or fields are expected to be covered. With regard to INT, the purpose of attracting leading talents around the globe is to attract top-notch INT talents to bring with them their businesses or R&D outcomes to Hong Kong. To facilitate the monitoring of progress and effectiveness in meeting these goals, we have set key performance indicators to attract not less than 100 high-potential or representative INT enterprises to set up or expand their businesses in Hong Kong in the coming 5 years, including at least 20 top-notch INT enterprises, bringing more than 10 billion Hong Kong dollars of investment to Hong Kong and creating thousands of local job opportunities. Thank you, President. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, President. My question focuses on leading talents, and they are different from top talents as defined in the policy address. Now, I want to provide special facilitation measures for top-notch talents, and public money may be involved, and the policies must be relevant. I'd like to ask the administration whether, after some time, review the current policies and for leading talents that cannot achieve the desired effect be removed from the list, and then facilitation measures given to them will be withdrawn. Secretary, we have to be very cautious. As mentioned in my reply, leading talents are really outstanding talents of a particular industry, and facilitation measures will only be provided to them after very vigorous consideration. Mr. Lian Kuo, thank you. Now we face a severe shortage of manpower. The policy address said that we should take the initiative to approach leading universities in the world to attract their graduates and talents to Hong Kong. My question to the Secretary is, what publicity measures do you have? Will you consider setting up a dedicated department to invite these graduates from top-notch universities? Can they be funded by the government to come to visit Hong Kong and join tours so that they have a better understanding of Hong Kong, be attracted to settle here? Secretary, the Talent Service Unit, to be chaired by the CS4A, has the duty to come up with a comprehensive plan for attracting talents all over the world to come to settle in Hong Kong and start their business here. We will make good use of our ETOs. The Talent Service Unit will map out the overall strategy. Implementation will be done by our ETOs. To take an example, there are 100 top-notch universities in North America, in Europe, and the UK, and there are 9 universities on the mainland included in the list. So we will invite the respective ETOs to approach these universities and promote to graduates this Top Talent Pass scheme. Dr. Priscilla Leung, thank you. Now we will provide the advantages and facilitation measures to attract the right talents to Hong Kong. We should not just look to the US and Europe and even the mainland. We should also consider talents from the Belt and Road initiatives. Now, talents would go for the most favorable place to settle. And I think the measures just outlined by the Secretary are not good enough. Now, in Shenzhen in 2011, they have got a peacock scheme for 10 years. And Yantian, Shenzhen has got a Wutong talents scheme. Talents are divided into 4 categories. Let me name the first 3. Cat A. For those, 3 to 6 million will be given to talents from Shenzhen and the mainland, and 2 to 3 million to overseas, and then 1.6 million to the talents from Shenzhen. Now, you mentioned a number of measures. I'm afraid they are not attractive enough. Will you consider these very successful schemes for trolling for top-notch talents to Hong Kong? Thank you. In mapping out our measures to draw for talents, we have considered different measures adopted by other places, including mainland cities. Now, in our own package, now in terms of our immigration scheme, we have both existing schemes and new schemes. We have relaxed the current requirements, and we've also got one-stop talent service unit. We have thought about this, but we don't think that the subsidized scheme implemented in Shenzhen may not be appropriate for us. Now, local talents should form the mainstay of our talent pool to be supplemented by talents from overseas. Now, Hong Kong is a place with plenty of opportunities, and I think our competitive edge lies in our opportunities. So we should extend our various admission schemes, and then we should provide these facilitating measures, and I think that will be attractive enough. Ms. Maggie Chen. President, the administration would like to introduce leading talents to Hong Kong so that we can have high potential enterprises in INT to come to Hong Kong. In addition to these measures, now we have got this 30 billion co-investment fund. How are we going to use this fund to enhance our development potential so that we can attract leading talents to come to Hong Kong, and local talents will also enjoy more opportunities for development? President, as mentioned in the policy address by the CE, the co-investment fund will consider co-investment to attract enterprises so that there can be co-investment. Now, locally, we have plenty of other funds for local enterprises, so there are plenty of openings. So the co-investment fund will be launched and implemented by the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, OASIS. Thank you. Mr. Edmund Wong, thank you. The administration mentioned a number of schemes to attract talents to Hong Kong. I once put a question to the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. Now we have various top talents on compliance and accountancy and asset management, and they are the practitioners are mainly accountants. But then in the schemes we have not covered accountants this time. So I'd like to ask whether our talent list will cover accountancy and legal professionals. Secretary, the talent list include 13 professions. As mentioned in the CE's policy address, we're going to review the talent list very soon. We will start the review very soon, and if necessary, we will enrich the scope of the talent list. Ms. Nexi Lam, thank you. When it comes to arts and culture talents, I have some ideas to see how we can promote the development of the sector. The Culture and Tourism Administration of the country has got plans to nurture talents in arts and culture for preserving the fine tradition of our culture. So while we attract talents into Hong Kong, we have something like an apprenticeship scheme so that we can nurture our own students, so that we can have our own talents in the arts and cultural sector. Thank you. Members may note that in the policy address, apart from measures to attract overseas talents, we have also got a lot of ideas for nurturing our own talents in terms of education. Now we are doing it in primary, secondary, and post-secondary education sectors, and we spend no efforts in training our local talents for arts. We will enrich our local talent pool so that we will even do better. Mr. Chan Kim Po, now we have policies for independence. I think they set restrictions, they are hindrances for talents to come to Hong Kong. For instance, we have age limit for children, and also dependent policy for parents, etc. So will the government reconsider these restrictions so that they will not be obstacles for top-notch talents to come to Hong Kong? Now, under our various admission schemes, applicants may, at the same time or at a later stage, apply to bring their spouses and also dependent children under 18 to come to Hong Kong as well. This is an established and proven scheme. So for the top talent pass scheme, the same will apply for their parents. Once the applicant has become a permanent resident of Hong Kong, they can apply their parents who are over 60 to come to Hong Kong as dependents. Dr. Johnny Ng, thank you, President. I welcome the top talent pass scheme so that we can have these people to come to Hong Kong quickly. But what about Web 3.0? We need leading figures, and many of the entrepreneurs are not graduates from the world's top 100 universities, and they may not have an annual salary of over $2.5 million as a start. So how are we going to attract this group of talents? Secretary. Now, when we talk about talents of very special skills, now if their annual salary has reached 2.5 million Hong Kong dollars, of course they can come under the top talent pass scheme. But if they have not reached that threshold, now we've also got the general employment policy and admission scheme for all sorts of talents. We have a talent list. So long as their trades or industries are under the talent list, then they can come to Hong Kong even though they have not yet found an employer. So long as respective industries can prove that they have shortage of manpower, then they can apply for people to come under these schemes. Mr. Dennis Leung, yes, we support various schemes, but as said by Mr. Johnny Ng, many top-notch talents come as a team, and then we need INT people in this data economy. Now, for those with an annual salary reaching 2.5 million and also graduation from the world's top 100 universities. Now, I don't see any universities from GBA in the list. In fact, we should attract talents from GBA for R&D industries. So what other measures do we have? Well, we have the top talent pass scheme, and then we have a talent list for the general employment policy and various talent admission schemes. Now, in the talent list, many industries are in line with the INT industry. So if these requirements are met, then there is no need for employers to prove that they are in this sector. In fact, there are 9 mainland universities among the world's top 100 university, and Zhongshan University is one of them. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, well, as said, we have the talent service unit providing one-stop service. I think the most important supporting measure these talents need is accommodation or housing. So will we help these industry to set up talents accommodation schemes? Otherwise, many world top-notch talents will not be interested to come to Hong Kong. Undersecretary, yes, we understand that accommodation is an important thing. We are building facilities like InnoCell, and in the Hong Kong Shenzhen INT Park at River Loop, we will have flexibility in planning so that more INT-related talents and employees will have a better living space there.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. It has been reported that due to a rise in fuel costs, the electricity tariffs of the two power companies have increased significantly this year and have shown no sign of coming down so far. On alleviating the burden of electricity tariffs on members of the public as well as the SMEs, will the government inform this council? 1. It has been reported that Russian crude oil has been sold at concessionary prices of a 25% discount in recent months. Whether it knows if the two power companies have considered purchasing energy from Russia to reduce the rate of increase in electricity tariffs. 2. Given that the rise in fuel prices involves international factors and is beyond the control of the two power companies, whether the government will, by drawing reference from the practices of other governments, roll out mitigation measures or extend the implementation period of the electricity charges relief scheme so as to alleviate the burden of electricity tariffs on members of the public and SMEs. And 3. In respect of aspects such as enhancing building energy efficiency and encouraging members of the public to reduce electricity consumption of the government's plans to enable smart electricity consumption to be further put into practice in Hong Kong by promoting the application of smart technologies so as to assist members of the public and SMEs in reducing expenditure on electricity tariffs. Thank you, President. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, all along the government's policy is to ensure that electricity needs of the community are met safely, reliably, and efficiently at reasonable prices and to minimize the environmental impacts of electricity generation. To put this into action, the government regulates the electricity markets of Hong Kong through entering into the Scheme of Control Agreements, or the SCAS, with the two power companies. According to the SCAs, the government monitors the power companies and the electricity-related financial affairs through development plans submitted by the power companies, as well as the annual tariff review and auditing review jointly conducted with them. The Environment and Ecology Bureau is now conducting the 2023 tariff review with the two power companies in accordance with the SCAs. Tariff proposals made by the two power companies will be examined stringently with reference to the trends in the international fuel market. It is expected that the results of the review will be available by the end of this year. In the past 2 years, international energy prices keep surging, with individual market prices of crude oil, natural gas, and coal registered an increase of 100% to 200% and 500% respectively. Amid the energy crisis aggravated by the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine since earlier this year, the international fuel prices accelerated rapidly. This has taken a heavy toll on electricity tariffs worldwide, with Singapore, Tokyo, and London range with a tariff increase range from over 20% up to even 70%. And Hong Kong is no exception. The situation in Hong Kong is relatively better. However, following the increases in monthly fuel cost adjustments, Hong Kong's overall net tariffs in November also saw an increase of nearly 20% over January this year. Regarding electricity tariff for residential customers in general, the current tariffs per units of electricity of CLP and Hong Kong Electric are 1.42 and 1.52 respectively, whereas the respective residential tariffs in Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, and London and Berlin were 1.74, $2.03, $3, and $3.66 per unit of electricity in last month. Therefore, our tariff is still competitive. Hong Kong has enjoyed a stable electricity supply with relatively moderate increases in tariffs, thanks to our regulatory regime. The SCAs capitalize on the advantages of two models, namely government monitoring and commercial operation. The government will critically examine capital expenditures of the two power companies to avoid excessive or unnecessary investments, thereby stabilizing tariff rates and providing sufficient incentives for ensuring a stable power supply. Meanwhile, cutthroat competitions are eradicated and power supply will not be disrupted by closure of power companies. In times of energy crisis, the power companies can make timely and flexible deployments under their commercial operations models to stabilize the supply of electricity, causing less impact on tariff rates. Moreover, fuel cost is charged to customers on actual basis, such that the power companies cannot make any profits therefrom. My reply to the question raised by Mr. Gary Chen is as follows. 1. In order to ensure stable power supply in the territory, the government has kept abreast of market developments and maintained liaison with the two power companies. Of the two power companies' existing fuel mix for electricity generation, nuclear power from Daya Bay accounts for about 30%, while the remaining is mainly natural gas imported from the pipelines in mainland, and coal accounts for about a quarter. The natural gas purchased by the two power companies is sourced from multiple channels so as to control and diversify the risk. In order to obtain the lowest price, the majority of them are long-term contracts with take-or-pay clauses as well. Therefore, purchasing natural gas from other suppliers will only add burden to the fuel cost. As for coal-fired generation, the two power companies make advance purchases from suppliers as fast as possible to ensure stability in price and supply. Besides, fuel oil is mainly used as fuel for the operation of backup generating units, which has little to do with the tariff. Hence, both power companies have said they have not purchased any crude oil from Russia. The two power companies are jointly constructing an offshore LNG terminal in Hong Kong waters. Upon completion, the two power companies will be able to purchase LNG from the international markets directly, thereby enhancing their bargaining power and reducing the tariff pressure. As coal price has risen sharply in recent years, the power companies are gradually using cleaner energy for electricity generation. The demand for coal-fired energy will continue to decline. 2. The government will continue to provide a monthly relief of $50 for each eligible residential electricity account since 2019 until the end of year 2023. A new round of electricity charges subsidy of $1,000 in total for residential accounts was also launched in June this year until May next year. In addition, the two power companies have provided support measures under their respective community energy saving funds to assist customers from SME and disadvantaged groups. We have to point out that international energy prices are affected by an array of factors, and the future outlook is still considerably uncertain. Provision of subsidy by the government is not a long-term sustainable option, and it will end up with a heavy burden on public finance. The best way to tackle this is to save energy. The prevailing technology allows ample room for electricity saving. All sectors of a community can also join hands to save energy by making changes in electricity consumption patterns and lifestyle choices. These result in energy consumption at a global level, as well as electricity expenses being reduced altogether, hence offsetting the impact of fuel cost increases. 3. As to the application of smart technologies, enhancing the transparency of data and benchmarks helps mobilize the community to achieve smart electricity consumption and take collective actions to conserve energy. The EMSD has launched the online building-based electricity utilization index benchmarking tool, which allows users to unveil energy-saving opportunities through comparing and reviewing the annual overall electricity utilization performance of commercial buildings. The tool also provides energy-saving advice for buildings. Also, through the Carbon Neutrality Partnership, the government encourages public and private sectors to set energy saving and carbon reduction targets and share their measures and results with the public. Through the E&M Inno portal, the government matches innovative and technological solutions developed by enterprises and academic institutions, which service needs from the government, public organizations, as well as the electrical and mechanical trades, and to conduct pilot projects in a collaborative manner. More than 160 projects are being tested, with 40 being energy-saving and renewable energy-related projects, including management of ventilation and air conditioning system with AI algorithms. In order to facilitate and promote smart electricity consumption, the two power companies are installing smart meters for their customers in phases and expects completion by 2025. At present, nearly 2 million customers have been using smart meters, which help them monitor and manage electricity consumption more effectively, thereby encouraging energy saving. Lastly, the government has put in place the Energy Saving for All website to help the community reduce energy consumption, ease the burden of electricity expenses, and enable the realization of smart electricity consumption in Hong Kong. Thank you, President. Mr. Gary Chan. President, you are a veteran of the business sector. There are no businesses model which is a sure win. What business model can fully transfer the additional cost to the consumers? The answer is the two power companies. In my main question, I mentioned that the major rise in electricity tariffs are due to the rise in fuel cost. Now, the power companies are fully transferring the additional cost to the consumers, and they are not taking the share at all. Why do the members of the public have to bear the full fuel cost? Why can't the governments and the power companies share the burden? In terms of the monitoring of the fuel cost recovery account, is the supervision too lax? Secretary. First, on the adjustment in fuel cost, we have a very robust regulatory regime. The two power companies have to review the changes in international fuel costs for the past few months, every 3 months, and make an adjustment. If there is a reduction of fuel costs, there will be an immediate, it will be immediately reflected in the electricity tariff. Now, a few years ago, in 1 year, the fuel cost has dropped by 40%. At the same time, for the same year, there was also a 40% reduction in electricity tariff. So the mechanism is effective. Mr. Gary Chan raised an important question. That is, what is our approach in monitoring the electricity market? As mentioned in my main reply, the government has adopted a regulatory regime through the Scheme of Control Agreements, or the SCAs. This is a combination of a government's regulated approach with the private decisions. So this is a very effective mechanism. We compare the electricity tariff locally and beyond Hong Kong. So compared with the hike in electricity tariffs of other jurisdictions, Hong Kong is doing relatively well. Now, for other places, the adjustment would be affected by investment costs. In Hong Kong, the government monitor the investment decisions made by the power companies to make sure that there is no excessive investment. The power companies can only make profits from capital investments in Hong Kong. In other places, there would be a competition model. So with that model in mind, the companies may transfer all the additional fuel costs to Hong Kong. And they ended up with a higher electricity tariff because the total capital investments they make is larger than the two companies in Hong Kong. Say, for example, generators and so on. So with higher investment costs, there will be higher electricity tariff. So we do have an institutional advantage to ensure the lowest electricity tariff possible. Mr. Lee, President, I paid close attention to the main reply of the Secretary. Secretary, do you think that the current practice is very reasonable? I mean that according to your main reply, the adjustments in fuel costs would be dealt with under a reimbursement principle, and the two companies cannot transfer the burden to the customers. Well, do you think transferring the additional fuel costs to the customers is a reasonable approach? Now, the two power companies are allowed an 8% profit. So beyond that, they do not have to bear the risk in terms of fuel cost adjustments at all. So do you think that is reasonable? Secretary? Well, I have to clarify that I am not defending the two power companies. I'm just giving an explanation on our regulatory regime. We are doing our best to keep the electricity tariff in Hong Kong as a minimum by stringently monitoring the operation and capital investment decisions made by the power companies. This is an effective regime in keeping the tariffs at a low level. Compared with other places, our electricity tariffs are relatively low. So that is the fact. On your question, whether the government has done our best to lower the electricity tariffs, or in terms of cost control, the government would require the power companies to provide evidence that all the capital invested are for meeting the electricity needs in Hong Kong. So that has been proven effective in terms of controlling the electricity and tariffs. In terms of using the reimbursement model, we can ensure that no profits can be earned by the power companies on the investment. So there are two benefits. First of all, we can ensure stability in electricity generation in Hong Kong. In the past 2 years, because of the energy crisis, there has been a surge in fuel costs. Over the world, many power companies have closed down because of the crisis. In Singapore, there have been several power companies which closed down because of the crisis. In Europe and other places, there have been instabilities in terms of electricity generation. That is because the governments did not ensure that the electricity generation can remain stable amidst a fuel cost crisis. In Hong Kong, in terms of financing, the investors, including power companies, enjoy an edge. As a result, the costs can be lowered. So they enjoy a competitive edge from our institution. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, President. Electricity is a daily necessity, and it is also a public utility. In Hong Kong, however, we have an oligarchy supply model in Hong Kong. Even with additional supply, it is not enough. Now, in the main reply, you mentioned other places like Singapore, Tokyo, London, Berlin, and so on. In Hong Kong, for CLP, the price is $1.42 per unit. For Hong Kong Electric, it is $1.52 per unit. Now, the government thinks this is a very good job. However, I've just looked at the data across the trades and in mainland. In year 2022, in March, Hong Kong's electricity per unit was cost of $1.25. In Macau, it was $1.19 per unit. In Taiwan, China, it was $0.69 per unit. In the mainland, it is just $0.59 per unit. Hong Kong has a free economy. However, the government is protecting the public utility companies and ensuring them a return. According to President Xi's speech, well, my question to the government is, how can the government lower the burden borne by the public? Can the government lower the allowable profits for the two companies? President, I have clearly explained how the government is controlling the electricity tariffs in Hong Kong. That is by combining government monitoring and market operation. We are controlling the investment input as well as keeping operating costs at a low so as to lower the electricity tariff. So the places I mentioned are comparable markets. So compared with other free markets, Hong Kong is enjoying an edge on whether we can lower the permitted rates of return for the two power companies. Well, we do have the SCAs in place, which will be valid until 2033. Based on the contractual spirit, we don't think it is the right time to adjust the permitted rates of return. Well, approaching year 2033, maybe we can review the arrangement. Mr. Michael Look, the Secretary's attitude is complacent. He says that our tariffs are already very low and he has done a lot. Well, Mr. Dennis Leung busted this myth. The two power companies are monopolizing the markets. They are protected by the government's policies. Every time they would make the most out of the permitted rates of return. They wouldn't budge at all. I have been criticizing them for a long time. President, on the other hand, I understand the government will not lower the permitted rates of return no matter what we say. So what can the government do in terms of diversifying the energy generation models? For example, the LNG offshore station. Now, we have a very stable natural gas supplier, that is the Yaicheng natural gas. We have to rely on the country. Now, in Hainan, there is a new natural gas field developed. Now, can the government reach out to the mainland government to ensure that there can be stable and stable supply of natural gas at a reasonable price? Secretary, President, in my main reply, I mentioned that the two power companies are building an offshore LNG processing depots for procurement of natural gas from international suppliers. So in the future, there will be more options. So any suppliers who are able to offer us with an with a competitive price will be considered. And also, Mr. Look mentioned, are we going to consider more energy supply model to lower the tariffs? My answer is yes. Well, under the decarbonization goal by year 2050, we will explore renewable energy and zero carbon energy suppliers in the world and in the mainland. If there are choices, we would definitely choose them.
Government bills. First reading. Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022 Bill. Inland Revenue Amendment. Taxation on specified